Welcome everyone, welcome to the Good AI new conversation of October. We're super happy to have you join us in the next seconds and minutes. Today we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace and how AI can help, what are the challenges around this. So my name is Caroline Lair and I'm the founder of the Good AI, who is organizing this event. We are basically building a place to inform, inspire, and gather the most innovative startups and the most brilliant talent, leveraging artificial intelligence for sustainability. Our community counts 180 startups and 150 talents, and at the beginning of next year, we're opening the door to cooperation to help them achieve their sustainability policy with the power of artificial intelligence. So what does sustainability has to do with diversity and inclusion? So often we refer to sustainability as environmental sustainability, but the concept of sustainability is made of three pillars: economics, environmental, and social. And sustainable development will only come if we have a perfect balance between these three. And in fact, diversity and inclusion within organizations is a real driver for sustainable results within companies. It enables higher cultural intelligence skills, higher ability to build strategy and make better decisions. It also improves and empower workforce for better performance, etc. Now, in the age of artificial intelligence, when numerous processes are being automated, such as recruitment, talent management, job search, when companies are also actively adopting AI and building teams of engineers and data scientists, we need to question ourselves: how can we make sure to leverage AI to serve diversity and inclusion in the workplace? What should we be aware? What should we be careful with? And we're super happy today to discuss this topic together with three startup members of the Good AI: Pymetrics, Skylab, and Human in the Loops, and the nonprofit Women in AI. I'm also very happy to moderate this panel together with one of our talents at the Good AI, Emma Lancelette. Emma, maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, Caroline. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our today's conversation. So my name is Emma Lancet. I'm an AI strategy consultant at AI Builders, which is a consulting firm based in Paris. And it's a pleasure to be here today. And the reason why I'm so excited for today's conversation is that earlier this year, prior to joining AI Builders, I submitted a thesis on the topic of mitigating gender bias in artificial intelligence. And what I noticed, some of the findings that I had, was that it was a topic that had been well acknowledged and discussed in research from a research standpoint, but however, that companies are still missing the right set of toolkits to properly mitigate gender bias in AI. So really looking forward to hearing about our speakers today on that topic.
Great, Emma, to have you on board. So in the next hour, the program is going to be the following. We're going to have a short introduction with each of our startups and nonprofit women in AI. Then we have a 30-minute conversation, and then we're happy to answer the questions. So please use the chat on the right side of the YouTube window. And so we're going to start the introduction of startups, and I'm going to start with Eva. So having Eva joining us to the stream, and Emma will see you just right after. Hi, Eva. Nice to have you here.
Hi, Caroline. How are you? Thanks so much for inviting me to join. I'm really excited about today's conversation.
Great. So let's maybe have a brief description of what Human in the Loop is doing and how you decided to create Human in the Loop.
Sure. So Humans in the Loop, we are a social enterprise. So we're somewhere between a for-profit company and a non-profit foundation. We basically combine both in our organization in a hybrid model. What we do is, on the one hand, we provide dataset annotation and collection for AI companies. So we're kind of the business process outsourcing partner who works with AI companies in order to provide them with high quality data sets, most frequently for computer vision and other types of visual data, so that they can train their models. through this work, we're actually accomplishing a very important social mission, which is to provide labor market inclusion for vulnerable people. Most specifically, we're working with conflict-affected people like refugees, migrants, people living in conflict zones. We have several different locations where we're partnering with local NGOs, and we work in Bulgaria, in Turkey, in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Lebanon. We're starting pretty soon another project, hopefully a successful pilot in Yemen as well, and potential one in Jordan. So we're very excited about contributing to the digital inclusion, specifically of conflict-affected people. We're very focused on the Middle East, but we're also supporting other organizations working with refugees in Latin America or in other countries. Recently, we had a pilot in Portugal with migrants and refugees who are living there. So we're really excited about the opportunity of bringing vulnerable people into the world of AI through this type of work. It is actually a notoriously burdensome type of work, which is usually outsourced to big crowdsourcing marketplaces. So we're trying to kind of flip that, and instead of annotation being seen as ghost work or work that actually bears a lot of liabilities and risks and potentially adversarial workers that might bring bad quality data into your data set, we're actually trying to portray this work as one of the very important building blocks of AI today, and to give the necessary acknowledgement of the contribution of data labelers, and to kind of uplift their position in the ecosystem. So yeah, I'm really excited because as a data set annotation company, we also see kind of what's cooking in the kitchen. Sometimes, when companies are building new models, they reach out to us in search of new data and new annotations. So we're kind of seeing where the market is going even before these models are deployed. And, we've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've seen, people trying to do questionable types of classification or recognition using human data. There are some bad practices that have been present in the industry since the early onset of large-scale data set collection, of just collecting any type of image that you can find online through Google search, for example, and not caring about its copyright or the consent of the people who appear in it and so on. So most recently, we have seen a lot of awareness being raised about this, and some of our clients are really trying to approach this in a more human-centric way. So building human-centric data sets that are completely consensual, compensated, and so on. So yeah, we have seen quite a lot of work that is being done as well in terms of HR, recruitment applications, and so on. And it would be good to discuss what the best practices are specifically in this. And I would say that I'm also bringing kind of this perspective of somebody who's not directly working in recruitment for AI data scientists or engineers and so on. We're actually at the much lower level, but we're fighting for inclusion at all of the different levels in the AI industry and beyond, and a diversity and inclusion agenda that also includes who your suppliers are, who your clients are, how are you serving society at large beyond just, trying to make sure that you're hitting the right proportions in terms of hiring. So yeah, this is about us, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the rest of the speakers.
Thanks so much, Eva. We're gonna leave the floor now to Emma and Alex. So
Hi, Alex.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining our conversation today. We're super excited to learn a bit more about Pymetrics. I know there's a lot of things that you guys do. So maybe you could let our audience know a bit about the company and also what you do over there as a Chief Science Officer.
Yeah, I'm super happy to do that. And thank you so much for having me. So just to give you a little bit of a background on Pymetrics, what we do is we work in the hiring space, and our core mission is to find people the best possible job for them. And in doing this, we make a break with the past in a couple of ways. One is that we are really, really focused on diversity and focused on using tools in the hiring space, in learning and development, in career pathing, that really give people new opportunities that they wouldn't have historically had access to. It's also worth saying that as we do this, we can increase the diversity of an organization. And that can be good, not just for kind of ethical and moral reasons, but because we know that this kind of increases the diversity of thought and helps with really robust decision making. So the way that we do this is we use an approach where we measure soft skills. So this is a little different than kind of the resume-based approach to deciding who would be good at a job, where, if you have a certain, version of C++ on your resume and you get the job, and if you don't, you don't. But there's a lot more to it when you think about what people are good at. They can be good at skills around decision making. They can have a particular approach to, for instance, just work management. Some people are really good at multitasking and kind of in an environment where that's good, and some people are really good at really focused work in an environment where that kind of thought is necessary. And so what we do is we deploy a suite of kind of gamified assessments that really map people's profiles across a variety of soft skills, including attention and focus and decision making, and other things like kind of emotional interactions and quantitative skills. And then where the AI comes in, and this is another thing that the team I have the privilege to lead gets to work on, is we'll then build a machine learning model that tries to predict kind of which candidates applying to the job are really good fits. Do they match the profile of people who are already performing really well in that job? And that actually works really well. You can imagine, just to kind of give it an example, like the kind of person that you would want in finance on the trading floor, trading really volatile derivatives, that person needs to have a different risk profile than somebody else working for the same finance company who's on the audit side, working to minimize risk. So we think we do a really good job of prediction, but in the machine learning process, we also work incredibly hard to make sure that we are being as fair as possible. And one of the really interesting things about this space is that we are regulated, to be fair, by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the OFCCP. But it's also, this is what our clients are asking for. They're asking us, how can we find high quality candidates in a way that lets us, move outside of our traditional sourcing channels, give new people opportunities, and really help increase the diversity of our entire organization. So that's what we do. My role in this is I have the privilege of leading both the science team and the data science team. That's why I get to be chief science officer. And what we do is we build these assessments, we build these models, and then we spend a lot of our time making sure that they work. And monitoring and post-deployment monitoring is a really big part of what we do. And I'm really, really proud to say that I actually think we're making a big difference compared to the assessments that people have used in hiring historically, which have been very biased against minority groups. We really think that we're making a difference and providing more workplace opportunity to more people.
Super inspiring. Yeah, there's a lot of questions I'm curious to dive into after we'll have the chance to let our other speakers present themselves. So we'll give the floor back to Caroline now, who will be talking with Ragnar.
Hey, Caroline, I think you're muted.
And then mute. Yeah, so here we are. Thanks, Hannah, for joining today. So Skill Lab, tell us everything about how you help job seekers to reveal their skills thanks to AI, if I'm right.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. It's so awesome to be here and to talk about this important topic. Yeah, let me talk a bit about Skill Lab, what we do. So we're a relatively small company from Amsterdam. We're about 20 people here right now. And we started in about 2018 because, some of the co-founders, we thought, hey, there is something to do in the skill space. And at the same time, all the innovation that had happened in that space, we saw happened largely for the HR department or for the corporate. So we said, hey, we want to build something that helps people in their employment journey. And so we set out to build a tool that helps people to analyze their skills, figure out what they can do with those skills, and then get something actionable out of that. So some education or a job. And so how that works in practice, or how that worked in practice, we started out helping people that had a lot of barriers on the labor market. And that's also what we continue to do today. And those barriers can be that you are moving geographically and suddenly somebody doesn't understand the job title that you had in your old home and in your new home, especially for refugees and migrants. You have to try and communicate what you are able to do for an employer, and you fail to do that because your job title just doesn't do that job for you anymore. The other thing could be professional networks that people don't have, or they left the labor market when they were younger, like my mom, and then 15 years later she wanted to go back and work again, but nobody understood what she did 15 years ago because that job title just didn't exist anymore. And so, yeah, we want to get rid of those job titles. We believe at GitLab that everybody has a pathway to employment through the skills. And so, with our tool, with our software tool, um, people or job seekers get interviewed by our AI on the skills that they have used or learned in all kinds of different experiences. That could be jobs, could be education, but could also be informal activities like taking care of an elderly person at home or raising children. A lot of skills that people learn that help them to go back into the labor market. And then on the basis of that skill profile that they create, we show them what they can do with it. We give them some basic career orientation, and then we'll, together with our partners, suggest jobs and education for them that would be a right fit for them to go further. And so I don't think I really need to explain too much why diversity and inclusion is super important for us, because I think we're active in almost 20 countries at this point, mostly in the international development space, helping people to, from refugees in Ecuador that are from Venezuela, from youth in Egypt that try to find the right education. This tool is being used in a variety of different contexts. And since we serve all these different communities, our own diversity is also paramount to delivering a good product to those people. And so that's why diversity and inclusion is top of our agenda, not just to have a great internal and I think way more exciting company culture, but also to just exist and be a good company for our customers and users. So that's all I have to say about that. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ragnar. I'm looking forward to the questions and the conversation just after that. So now we're going to end the presentation with Alexandra and Emma. And we're leaving.
Hi, Alexandra.
Hello, Emma. How are you?
Great, thank you. So last but not least, I'm super excited to welcome Alexandra Sala, who not only is a president at Women in AI, but is also a director in artificial intelligence and data science at Shutterstock. So looking forward to hearing a bit more about it.
Thank you, Emma. I'm delighted to be here today with you. And maybe let's take a step back and I'll tell you a couple of things about me and my career journey. So today, as you mentioned, I'm Director of AI and Data Science at Shutterstock and the Global President of Women in AI, which is an amazing organization, which I'll be talking about a little bit more. But how did I get there? I did my PhD back in Italy. As I was going through my PhD studies, I moved abroad, first in Europe, and then I ended up spending 5 years in US doing research in academia. At that time, my career was very much focused on an academic path. And then in 2012, I met Bell Labs, which is an industrial research center. So I moved from research in academia and research into industry. I've spent 8 years there, started as a senior researcher, and then ended up 5 years leading as a head of analytics research organization, an organization across many divisions and countries in Europe. So today I'm a Shutterstock, but most importantly, part of this amazing community, which is called Women in AI. Women in AI is a nonprofit organization, and it's really at the core made of women volunteering their time to help each other to go through a career in AI We are present in more than 140 countries around the world. So it's an amazing distribution of geography, culture, language, and different career journey that you encounter in different countries around the world, different needs and different also way to think about this field. As we know, AI has demonstrated a dramatic failure when diversity was taken into account in the way data were sources, in the way models were built, in the way teams were built, bringing diverse perspective into the field. So Women in AI is focused on growing talent in AI through a number of different education programs and dissemination program to let women to dream a possible career in AI and enable them through a path. It doesn't matter where you start. There is always a path to become a talent in this field. And we also are very clear in our mission that we understand that cultural and background diversity is very important. We need people with psychological background, with cultural background, philosophy, to really question about the big ethical question that this field is calling upon.
Great. Thank you so much, Alexandra, for this great introduction about women in AI and Shutterstock. Let's jump into the questions now. So let's dive in with Caroline into the questions. And you're on mute again, Caroline.
Thanks so much, everyone, for this short introduction. It was great, and now we're super happy to get into the conversation. Don't hesitate to question each other. Of course, Emma and I have quite a few questions for you guys, but again, we don't have to follow them. We don't have to follow the rules. So, but to get us started, I'm gonna follow the rules because I know Alex is with us only. He only has 10 minutes left, so let's try to get the most of you, Alex. So I'd like maybe you to give a few examples of, let's say I am a recruiter working in a Fortune 500 company. When do I use parametrics? Like, can you give us maybe 2-3 examples when I recruit, I guess, but also when I do talent management? So how does it work? Like,
yeah, I'm really happy to do that. And I think, one of the most important roles that a company like Pymetrics can play is in diversifying large companies. White collar work has traditionally been particularly subject to bias, and we are working really, really hard to provide people new tools to overcome that. So I'm happy to give a few examples. One example that really comes to mind is that although a lot of our work internally focuses on making sure that our individual models are as free of bias as possible and making sure that basically the performance of every model is as good as possible. The models that we deploy actually enable our clients to do new things. So one example is that we have clients that have traditionally done kind of high volume early career hiring in white collar industries where they really want the best talent they can possibly get, but they have limited recruiting resources. So they will go to where they have historically gone, which is often like Ivy League schools, other kind of signifiers of productivity like that. But we know that that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is that folks are sourcing from groups that also don't have a ton of diversity, and then no client should be surprised if the resulting people who get hired also lack diversity. And so one of the things we do is, because we can provide fair solutions, we can provide efficient solutions, and we think we can do this at scale, we can enable our clients to source much more broadly. So for instance, to source from non-Ivy League schools, to source employees from historically Black colleges and universities. And this is really giving people new opportunities in ways that I think are really meaningful. And what I really like about that is that that's not just us, right? That's, we build the models, and we have to make sure that the models that we provide for the client that enable this efficiency and this diversity, that those are as good as possible. But it really enables kind of a new approach to getting the best talent into the client's employee stream. Another one that comes to mind is that we do focus a lot on, kind of the selection process, the hiring process, and hiring and recruitment. And the largest volume of our users are often in early career hiring, because there's a lot of volume in early career hiring. But there is, important work to be done to increase diversity at every stage of someone's career. And so we've now transitioned to a lot more work in talent management and in career development, where, if somebody wants to move internally within a company, we can help them do that. And we can help make sure that we're not kind of sub-selecting one group for, say, promotion into the new interesting field, and can help make sure that we give everybody as much opportunity for career development as possible. We're also moving into the learning and development field, which is kind of similar, trying to make sure that people are aware kind of any skills that they need to move into a new field, so that they have as much opportunity as possible. And in the end, we're trying to do this across the entire client lifecycle, and really the entire career lifecycle of everyone that we have contact with. Oh, you're muted, Carolyn.
I'm terrible at this. Can your customers also use you have a detecting bias algorithm that is open source,
Yep.
right? So can your customer also use this algorithm in all their process?
Yes. Yeah.
That's
So
what
they yeah. So what you're referring to, we have a software package called Audit AI, and one of the things that it does is, for any solution that you're using in an automated way in the selection process, or really anything, you can use it to assess potential bias against potential groups and make decisions like, if I pass 10% of the people, then I'm at some risk of bias. If I pass 50% of the people, I'm at less risk of bias. And this kind of helps tune where a given algorithm is appropriate for deployment and not appropriate for deployment. So we absolutely provide that, and we walk through that with our clients. We also have more internal tools that really lean on kind of pretty sophisticated statistics to make sure that clients aren't fooling themselves when they only have a few people coming through the funnel. But yeah, it's worth saying that we, in particular, because we influence every stage of the hiring funnel, like, we're only one stage, right? Usually relatively early, because we're not, we're a light touch for the client, so they can use us on a large candidate pool. Even though that's our kind of core area of responsibility, we really influence the entire hiring process, and we'll work with our clients to help them with analysis of every stage of their hiring process.
That's amazing. So I was wondering, maybe Eva, when you're working with clients, have you already have some requests to work on some bias auditing tools like this?
It's actually something that we've been thinking about a lot, especially in terms of computer vision, because there is different. If you don't have the data that has the complete set of attributes in terms of gender and other types of demographic traits, you're actually unable, even if you have the best tool on the market, you're unable to use it in order to analyze your data. So we've been thinking a lot about this, specifically for debiasing solutions. Absolutely. And I think that our clients are also definitely looking into this. But I think that also a big challenge that some of our clients are coming across is how to even formulate inclusion, or the different characteristics, or how do we even classify people in order to make sure that we aren't being unjust towards anyone. Do we classify them based on gender or gender expression and appearance, especially in computer vision? It's even, gender is a let's say, subjective thing. You might not be able to even realize what the gender of the person is by looking at them. So especially when talking about computer vision, we have to be very careful about whether we classify people based on something called ethnicity, or something called skin color, or other attributes that might be imageable or non-imageable. And there are just like so many different ways in which companies are trying to navigate that. And there are some best practices already. Some companies, especially for classification purposes. They're rejecting any type of gender classification. They're just classifying people as humans and trying to be, fair towards everyone. But of course, when you're trying to measure how your models are performing on different groups, you do need to split them in some way in order to measure how fair you are towards them. So it's kind of, a catch-22 of, we don't want to classify people, but we kind of have to in order to measure how we're performing across different groups. So yeah, I'm really interested in the tools that Alex's team is working on. And I think, computer vision is kind of out there, and it's a little bit more difficult to apply such tools on it, but it's definitely a big topic right now.
But there might be a link between computer vision and sentiment analysis and recruitment tools, right? There are several algorithms in HR using sentiment analysis, which I personally have ethical issue with this. I don't know what you guys think about that. And sorry, Emma, I've stolen your question.
Yeah, so just from my side of the fence, working in kind of the recruitment field, there are folks in the recruitment field who have deployed computer vision algorithms to try to decide who would be good at a job. The Pymetrics position is pretty clear on this one. In general, for exactly the reasons that Eva brings up, we think that this is usually not appropriate for the employment space. There's simply too much risk of unfair discrimination against specific protected classes, against other classes that are not protected, but we also still want to kind of not legally protected, but we still really want to do right by. And in, like the Pymetrics position is that particular approach is something we're never going to do, particularly around facial recognition and technologies like that. Sentiment analysis is, I think, a really, really interesting point, and something that is really at the edge of AI in general right now, right? So we have models like GPT-3 coming out that really have a fundamentally different way of understanding and working with human language than anything we've had previously. And I do think that there's probably some space for understanding how different people communicate. I think it is a very challenging task to make sure that you are not, kind of codifying one method of communication and saying that there's only one way to communicate correctly. We don't want to kind of industrialize the idea of tone policing into one particular way of speaking in the workplace. And I think that's a big danger with sentiment analysis.
I completely agree with you, Alex. You said something very important. And we do not believe those tools are really effective. I'll also speak after my comment about the actual EU regulation. But before that, there is something that is called the human potential, is what you haven't demonstrated yet as person, but you have the potential to achieve. And that's usually a good manager identifies potential in his team and enable that person to become the future him or her. And the same thing, the HR people have that very human intuition of understanding that candidate that hasn't gone to that level yet, but has the potential to achieve, which cannot be measured only on your past achievement or comparing yourself with someone else that has gone to that point of their career, because that person may not have had the same level of potential and may not have had the opportunity to realize that potential. Therefore, didn't realize it is also impacting you not to receive the opportunity to realize on those potential. The proposal regulation on artificial intelligence that has been published in April this year and is in discussion with industry at the moment from you, the AI Act. It's very clear in Annex 3 in defining the high risk AI system in education, in training and HR and recruiting. Those systems are considered high risk because they can enable or not enable a person to take part of a life that can change your opportunities. So it's very explicitly classified. Tomorrow I'll be addressing the parliament with some industrial consideration from an industrial perspective, how we in industry that are building and bringing to market AI model are looking at those high-risk categories versus prohibited. Prohibited is everything that is biometric-based, remote in public spaces. High risk is everything that is biometric related and user are not aware, public spaces, and so on. So there is a very precise classification of those systems that I think it will help us to guide future discussion and start to have a common ground on where to build innovation and how this innovation can really play against fundamental rights.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great point, Alessandra. And I think, the work that is being done to identify risk in AI systems, it's really important to say that that's not just machine learning work. It's not something that you can sit down with a pen and paper and do some math to figure out. You really need to do the data work, do the sociology, understand deployment, and understand historical inequities. Just to say a couple of things that we're working on in this space. One thing that we think is incredibly important is transparency in outcomes. So historically in the hiring space, lots of folks have had to measure this stuff before, but they keep the actual results under wraps for a variety of reasons, mostly just for risk management for the client who, reasonably doesn't want to share their private information. One of the things that we're supportive of is there are initiatives, for instance, in New York City to require anybody using a hiring assessment tool to actually report the bias results of that tool and its impact on diversity yearly, and also to report those kind of pre-deployment to the client, so the client knows what they're getting. And that I think is super important. And I'd love to see more initiatives at, obviously the local level, but also like the federal level and as well as in the EU. The other thing that we think is really important is that in these high risk spaces, I don't think anyone should expect to have their word taken at face value without really showing that they're doing what they say. And so, for instance, we helped put together what we think is basically the first high quality public audit or third party audit rather of the Pymetric system, where we actually gave full access to our systems to an independent researcher at Northeastern University, and basically let him try as hard as he could to break it, and to see whether we were doing what we said we were doing. Does it do what it says on the tin? But also to see, what if there was an employer who just wants to use us for greenwashing, right? And really like actually does want to institute a very, say, biased selection process, but use us at the same time. And one of the really nice things is they were very validating, frankly, for all of the hard work that the team at Pymetrics has put in over the years to make those models better.
Super interesting. Staying in this high risk place conversation, which could extend for a long time, I think. There's a lot of different viewpoints that we could address. I'm interested in extending the conversation to Ragnar with regards to our awareness on AI and other technologies in general, which are already replacing hard skills such as accounting, administration, and so on. And the question is, how can we give each worker the chance to leverage and adjust their skill set so that they can embrace this changing environment and this changing workplace and time, and to stay up to date with the latest technologies?
Yeah, sure. I think this is a really good question. Actually, it almost connects to the previous one, because the workplace is very dynamic, right? And I mean, even humans in hiring decisions, they aren't unbiased, right? So it's not like we're replacing something really, really good here with technology. But when you look at automation in general, and not just AI automation, it's always hard to predict for the job seeker or for the employee themselves what's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years, right? It's not something new. And so I think one of the best things that we see that can happen is that we, first of all, educate people about which skills they have. So this is a little bit more the flip side of what Pymetrics does. You know, we're really about hard skills. So we try to educate people on these are the few hundred skills or so that I've learned over the course of my life, and this is sort of my capital that I can bring into any hiring conversation. And then based on that, I think it's really important to give recommendations and give the confidence to people that they can use those skills in the future, because that is oftentimes not communicated properly. They say, hey, your skills that you learned 10 years ago, they're completely irrelevant suddenly 10 years later. We think that's not true, but the combinations of how you apply skills to different roles, that changes a lot. And then you just have to add a few extra skills here and there, something new emerging, and you suddenly got a completely new role and somebody that fits a future job. So those two things, I think, educate people about the skills they have and also what they can do with them is super important. And then I think the other thing, and again, this is something that we've done now, but we see this as a general trend. Education providers need to start to design their education more thoroughly around the skills that are in demand actually reasonably soon in the future. That's very hard for them to do. We know that large education providers are generally not the fastest moving organizations. And so what we've seen now is that actually companies, private education providers used our tool to create kind of a scan of which skills are available in a cohort of people, and then design the curriculum around that skill pool that's already there to fill the gaps towards a specific career pathway. And so I think, yeah, if you take those two things together, educate people about their skills, yeah, telling them what they can do with them and giving them the confidence that they can, and then providing them with really good education that fits those gaps, I think then you're gonna have a good time. But these aren't easy things to do, of course. Yeah.
And so, Ragnar, can you maybe explain a bit how your app is working? Like, if I am, for instance, let's say I'm a refugee arriving in one country, so I will connect. How does it work? And can you explain a bit?
So generally, we work with partners. So we don't deploy the app directly to job seekers. We work with partners that are embedded in a local context, which is super important because they have the knowledge and the ideas to make our tool work. And so, for example, it could be a refugee context, but it could also be just a general employment provider or employment service provider in a country or career service. The job seeker goes there and gets invited to our tool. They fill their details in, they get interviewed by our AI about the skills they've used or learned. They create that skill profile in the process by confirming or rejecting skills. And eventually, on the basis of that, they have a career exploring tool in our app that they can use to see which career pathways work for them, which skill gaps they still have, and what they can do with the existing skills. And the important piece here is that this is all happens on a mobile phone at people's own time. And the idea is really to almost separate the career counseling service from our app and say, with this tool, you're self-sufficient. You can take matters into your own hand, and you're empowered to kind of paint your own pathway forward. So that's how our tool works in a quick nutshell. You can check it out and visit skillup.io, of course, to see it.
And with regards to that, not specific to what you mentioned, but also to what has been discussed previously. Curious to have your thoughts on individuals who are keen on applying to jobs which are now led and include AI tools, and how do you believe that those people can really prepare for a recruitment process that is enabled by AI tools, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, this is really, really interesting, right? I think that what Alex's team does is super exciting, because I think it can actually take out a lot of the bias that is current in hiring processes today. And so what we try to do is we try to take away the importance of the job title, and we allow people to export from the profile they've built in our tool a CV that is optimized towards a specific type of job, and therefore hits all the keywords for the ATS, and can sort of automatically pass that tech layer. It doesn't even have to be AI. I do think it's very, very critical. I think in terms of how does the AI assess, Alexandra already pointed towards that. It's a super high risk thing to do. What can people do to sort of overcome it? I think they should be, I think companies like ours, they should help people to get the tools to get ahead of the HR department, right? To right now, or oftentimes the technological advantage is on the corporate side. It's easy to sort out a few CVs and just throw them in the bin. And I think there are companies like ours that are trying to reduce that technological advantage and be there for the job seeker. And so I would say to any job seeker, go out there and try to find those companies, those tools. There are lots of really good resume scanners and things like that that help you to optimize your chances. Use them for your advantage. That's what I would say. Yeah.
And with this, we're going to move to our third part about inclusive business model and how do we rethink business model in the age of AI and the necessity of to have an inclusive AI. And I want to ask Eva. So Eva, you know, I'm a great admirer of what you're doing, the commitment of your business, you know, to involve vulnerable people, train them in the age of AI, give them the specific skill to, you know, not survive, but navigate in this new world. But on paper, it seems super positive. But I know people around me telling me, oh, you know, it's micro working, or it's the new. I mean, it's very labor intensive, and it does require poor qualification. It's low paid contribution. There is all these, you know, narratives around this new job around annotation labeling, and I don't think it's really fair. And I wanted to have your opinion on this. And I'm pretty sure this is not the case in the end.
Yeah, it's a great question. And you know that I mentioned actually in my presentation in the beginning that this is widely known as this type of, you know, ghost work that people perform, and they're just some anonymous workers who are, you know, perhaps, you know, adversarial, and they're just trying to get the money for the job without actually putting in the effort. So there are tons of stereotypes about people who are doing labeling. But it actually ties in a very interesting way with what we've been talking about, because our goal with this, and, you know, kind of the way that in which we imagine this, is that we're taking people who really are on the other side of the digital divide. They might not know how to work with a computer, or they might not have enough digital skills to even create their own resume and to apply to jobs online. And we're really trying to channel just some very basic entry-level work to them so that they can get used to working online as a freelancer, remotely, and so on. And that actually fit very well with, you know, the entire pandemic context, where everybody started working online and remotely and so on. And this was something that we were trying to instill as a practice ever since we started working, you know, back in 2018 and 19. And it's actually, I mean, if you think about the entire global population that it does not have access to regular connectivity, and may not have the necessary hardware, may not have good enough internet connection. I mean, there are so many people who we need to include, who are even, you know, out of the reach of even, you know, new systems and tools that we're designing in order to make hiring more inclusive, just because they're, you know, really hard to reach. So our company is kind of working with that type of population. We're trying to provide them with this entry-level job. It's not, a lifetime career that we're planning for them and labeling. Our goal is for this to become a springboard to other opportunities. But then, you come to the question of, okay, what types of similar jobs, I might be learning something that is considered maybe a skill of the future. I'm learning something about AI, about data. How can this be useful in my context? Very frequently, it actually isn't, because opportunities locally that are not, remotely and so on, they are still quite standard, and we have to balance in terms of what types of skills do we teach people and what skills are actually relevant for them in their context. So, all of because we also have a training component in our program, and, what Ragnar was talking about in terms of designing curricula for people and, trying to really shoot for what is going to be a skill and demand in the future. That's something that's actually quite difficult, because you have to balance with, what's within the reach of the specific person. And, in a lot of cases, the work that we're providing is very new and very novel for the people that we're working with. And then again, you have the question of access. So even if the person has already, a very, completely optimized CV, they're ready to start applying, but where do they go? How do they secure these jobs? How do they even approach employers? How do they find them? So there is this kind of bridge that still exists. And sometimes, you can try to become a freelancer, work online, or you can try to start applying for jobs remotely. Now it's more accessible than ever, but there is still a big bridge in terms of actually, companies reaching all of these underrepresented groups and hard to reach groups, and also these groups reaching those jobs that exist somewhere, but maybe sometimes are not even advertised. They are going directly to the Ivy League fairs, job fairs, and so on. And they're just still inaccessible to the rest of us.
And one thing I saw, so that we've discussed together, your position is also to provide ethical AI labeling, ethical AI annotation, which means that what I understand is that this micro job, it's not that micro, because you're also gonna learn them to label and annotate in an ethical way, and this is also super key and super new, and this is a real skill. This is my understanding of it.
Yeah, and we are trying to raise awareness. For example, when I'm a labeler and I'm labeling images of people, what is the purpose of this project? Why do I have to put boxes around their faces? Why am I classifying them in one way or the other, right? So the knowledge of why you're doing what you're doing and what's the purpose of the data that you're labeling, I think is really key to also empower labelers to maybe, flag images that they find are maybe edge cases, or, to actually help data scientists identify some of the difficult cases or abnormalities that might appear in the data set. So this is a way in which also the data labeler, who has gone through your entire data set, who knows what the composition of the data is, can also support you in your work. So we definitely try to create kind of this communication channel and feedback channel, so that the people who are working on the AI model can also receive the feedback from the labelers and can also acknowledge their value and contribution.
This is far from being a micro job. This is high value. It's like when we don't give enough, we don't consider enough, for instance, the work of nurses, and here it's a bit the same. It seems to be a low, how could I say that, low value job, but this is totally the opposite. If we want to do it well and in an ethical way, this is super key. So again, I'm a big admirer of what you do, but I think it's super important, and we need to give value to the people who are doing this job.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, there is merit in every single job, right? The question is doing it well and doing it right.
Emma, you want to continue with?
I have lots of questions. Yeah, I have.
And then we'll move to the Ruben last part.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me. Okay, so One of the questions that I was keen to ask was regarding all the principles that we see emerge with regards to fairness, with regards to trustworthy and responsible AI that have come out in the last few years and that continue to come out. From a practical standpoint, what do those look like in a real world environment, in a company setting? And what do you see are the necessary building blocks to get to those, to reach those standards in a real world scenario, according to you?
Let's try to have a short answers for each of you, because I think we're going to run out of time. But this is so interesting. So let's go, and then we can also talk about women in AI in specifically.
I think is very shortly, every industry and every player needs to apply to the specific use case. There isn't a general rule. For example, a Shutterstock is a two-side platform where creator can bring their content and sell it to marketer or people that needs this digital content within their ecosystem. We source with diversity across 1 million contributor around the world with different language, with different culture in more than 150 countries. Content is manually reviewed before enter the platform, so you guarantee standard and quality and not offensive content and all of that. We build AI teams which are diverse, and then we try to bring structure and reporting into the product that guarantee that the full process guarantee all those ethical standards. But it really needs to be done within each industry, within each player, because it's so delicate and aligned to what you actually do, what kind of data you're actually dealing with, that there are few general rules that can apply to everyone.
Yeah, and I just to chime in on our side, I mean, we are, to Alessandra's point, in one specific industry, and we really have to tune our approach to what's appropriate for this industry. And a lot of the accountability when you're in the hiring space has to do with regulation, and it's absolutely correct that there should be these regulations, but it's honestly not enough. The regulations cover one particular kind of fairness, and I think providing opportunity is just as important as part of our mission as ensuring that the outcomes are kind of legally compliant. The other thing we're saying is that we are moving into a world in which there will be dozens of AI deployments that people interact with every day, and it's really important to provide transparency into these. And it's simply unreasonable to ask people who aren't experts, say both in hiring and in machine learning, and there aren't a lot of those, to really understand what we do. And that's like one of the reasons why we focus on public disclosure of our diversity results, which we're really proud of, and also on external audits, because I think it's really important to not just kind of have a news article here or a news article there, but to really build up an ecosystem of auditing and transparency and accountability for every company that's working in this space.
I may just jump in. Alessandra needs to go on time. Alessandra, one question for you, and so we couldn't go through all the questions. So what is your advice? It's an inspirational question. What is your advice to all our female listeners that are reluctant to go in the tech industry? Why do we need them in the AI scene in particular? What would you tell them?
We have seen a dramatic failure in the AI field in discriminating female, in discriminating minorities. We need to challenge the status quo. We need to challenge those team of engineers that are building those systems, that are taking all the diversity into account. And only if we build diverse team, we can really reach to that healthy challenge and creative innovation process that is absolutely needed. I have to say, women are amazing in playing with data. We have the natural curiosity and that ability to connect dots that we do every day, because we do 10 things at the time. And I feel when I work with the female side of my team, we just are so creative and we love working with data sets so much. So it feels just a natural fit. I know that in the mainstream may seems more highly coding oriented and men jobs. But when you start to get it and to start to doing it, it takes very little training to start to enjoy doing it. It starts to become just a natural process where you want to learn every day a new way of doing, a new model, and then you grow your career in the space. So my advice is very simple. There are career paths that can get you from where you are into this field with very simple certificate level. In Ireland, we have launched a 3 months, 12-week certificate level run, supported from the government, run in one of the local university, that enable people to become familiar with this technology, AI and data science, and start to be able to be good candidate to enter the job market. And then the more you do, the more you learn. So it's a journey, it's a lifelong learning experience those days, and we constantly learn new things every day. So don't be scared, just start with those very simple courses because you will enjoy very much. And I'm sorry I have to jump, but has been lovely to be with all of you today. So thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Alexandra. And I will just add, join us also Women in AI, because this is one of the biggest community in the field, and you get support from your peers. And
Exactly.
Thanks, Alexandra.
Thank you.
So let's finish a few minutes more. So the topic of Women in AI. So what about you, Eva? Among your AI team, what is the gender ratio in all of your team, by the way?
We actually used to be very unbalanced. We used to be all women. So, we were actually balanced in the, I guess teams actually, want to achieve this type of, representation of women, but it's not healthy either, right? You really need a well-balanced team in order to make it work. As Ragnar mentioned, we're working with different locations, different geographies. We want to make sure that they're also rightfully represented in our team, and that we're not just creating solutions for other contexts and other communities, but we're rather working with them and with people who are coming from these contexts and are coming through a lived experience of a sort in order to make sure that what we're doing is actually relevant. So we're still, still trying a bit to balance the team out. And it actually is quite hard for a small company that doesn't have too many resources for recruitment and so on. So definitely something that we've been trying to deal with very, very limited resources. But yeah, in the end, it's a matter of having an open mindset of like who might be a good fit for your company culture, and really trying to accept people as they are and with all the richness and cultural contribution that they can bring.
Thanks, Eva. What about you, Alex and Ragnar? How is it in your team?
You want to go or I can go? So our data science team is very small, so it's easy to report that it's 50-50 ratio, but it's only 2 data scientists. But overall, at a company level, I think we have a lot of work to do. I echo exactly what Eva is saying. It's really hard as a small company to do this, but I think it's even harder to do it when you're a big company and you haven't done it. And so I think it's super important to do it from the first day. I mean, of course, you got to have all the policies, all the commitments. We even have them in our company corporate notary documents and things like that. But in practice, you also need to execute on them. And there's so much you can do nowadays to where you can research how you build that kind of company. And that's really the company that we want to build. And then I think maybe this is the discussion question I want to throw out there. Like, how can we, as those kind of companies, also win the race for that diverse talent that is out there? Which for us, we had some situations where the larger big tech company outbid us on a lot of candidates. This is not only true for female or for candidates with different backgrounds. And so, yeah, how can we create that sort of fairness and also in the hiring space from that point of view would be an interesting topic to talk about, I think. But yeah, the conclusion points are you just have to constantly do it, constantly be aware of it, constantly try new things to improve it, and ask all of your employees about how they feel, how the current situation is, and what you can improve. And so that's what we're aiming to do, and what we're doing, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's right. And look, I think it's really important for someone in my position, you know, a white man in a position of leadership, to be as proactive and to listen as much as I possibly can to understand issues that I don't, frankly, have access to in my day-to-day life. You know, I'm really proud of Pymetrics' diversity results in our own internal hiring. I think we've done a great job of that. You know, on the data science team right now, I think 3 out of 4, sorry, team leads are female right now, or non-male right now. And we work really hard to make sure that folks have career paths that match what they want. I think one of the dangers that we all know in careers is that people can get pigeonholed. And, you know, in particular, if women enter their data science career with a particular angle just because of their historical experience, they can get pigeonholed in that kind of work forever, even if they want to be doing something else and have the skills to be doing something else. So that's something that I also take really seriously, and making sure that people can cross-train and get the responsibility that they want and deserve is also really, really important to me.
Well, it feels good to hear all of this. Very positive. Congratulations on all the work you're doing. I think we're going to stop here because we already overpassed the time. But it was such an interesting conversation. Thanks so much for making it happen. Very shortly on my hand, my position is that I'm super convinced that AI, again, is bringing a lot of opportunities for diversity and inclusion. And we saw that in the workplace for HR application, but it's going to be the same for many AI application in the field of health, in the field of access to finance, in the field of education, all over the place. We need diversity and inclusion, and AI should really be here to serve this goals. And I'm pretty positive we're going that direction with companies, startups like you, and community saleswomen in AI. So with this, I want to thank you all. Maybe Emma, you want to add something?
Yeah, I completely agree with what you said. Very positive thoughts with everything going on. Very inspiring learning from you and from what's going on in your respective companies. And it's really been a pleasure learning about all the different projects that you're working on. I hope that the audience will feel as inspired as I am about the conversation that just took place. And I'm looking forward to the next events from the Good AI.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Eva. Thanks, Rana.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our next newsletter, and if you are a talent or startup willing to join a community, just go online and apply. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.